Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Not a ton of quilling, but we're going to be making little Valentine's Day paper flags with some quilling accents on them. Just a couple of techniques we're going to be doing today. So for my flags, I have some cardstock. I have a straight edge here, or you can just grab a ruler. That's just to be able to do the shape of our flags. You can either emboss the shape or you can just draw it with a pencil. We're going to be cutting out the flags from that cardstock. For the quilt part of our project today, grab whatever Valentine's-y colors you like or anything that will go with the color of your flag. So I have some reds and some pinks, a little bit of gray, and then I also have a tiny bit of light brown, and that's going to be for the pole for my flag. Those are all our standard 1/8 inch wide paper, but I do have three colors here that are wider, a 3/8 inch wide, and we're going to talk about that later. I have a needle tool, slider tool will work fine. I have tweezers, small scissors. I'm going to be using Elmer's glue, but grab some tacky glue as well. That'll come in handy when we're putting things together. And then I have an alternate craft at the end that if you want to make that, you're going to need a little bit of string or twine or even yarn will work as well. And then one more thing you're going to need if you're following along is going to be a paper crimper. So I have my favorite one here. Now to start off with, we're going to have to make some different thicknesses of paper for different reasons. So this gray here is going to be what I'm going to use for a little accent piece. This is what I'm actually going to be feeding through the paper crimper that I just showed. But I want this to be really sturdy. So I'm going to make a double thick strip of this gray. And again, colors are your choice on this one. You can do whatever you want. This is just so it sort of stands out against the color of the flag that I'm going to make later. And you've probably seen me do this 100 times if you've been following for a while. If this is your first time, I am doing this technique to make the paper a little bit sturdier and just have some more weight to it instead of having to buy thicker paper just for some small accents. So what I do is I take a long piece of quilling paper and I fold that in half, and then I run a solid but thin line of glue all the way from the half mark to the end. Then I fold it back over, run it through my hands a couple times, and as that dries, it's going to get nice and thick and strong. Now I'm doing the same thing for a small piece of the brown. I mentioned earlier I'm going to be using that to make the pole for my flag, but I want this to be even sturdier. So after the double thick here dries, I'm going to fold it again in the center and do the same thing. So it ends up being 4 layers of paper, 2 layers of glue. That makes sense. I'm going to try to speed along here and pretend that this has been drying for a few minutes. Just in case that was confusing, show what I mean here. Fold it up again. So now you can see how small it is. And do the same thing, glue right there from the center out. Now the reason you want to let it dry fully between these two steps instead of just going forward like I did here is because you might end up like wrinkling your paper that you can't just get it to smooth out. So do as I say, not as I do situation. Just wanted to demonstrate folding this all the way into force. So there's my 2 pieces. We're going to set those aside and let those dry. And now we're going to move along to making the flag. Now, what we're doing is kind of making a double-sided flag that's going to be sort of a diamond shape. We're going to fold that in half to make the triangle shape, and it's going to wrap around the pole we just made. You can just freehand this if you want to. What I like to do, just to make sure that I don't have to keep cutting and trying to make it even on both sides, is I am using my straight edge here and my embossing tool. If you want to use a pencil, go for it. This is the back of the paper I'm using for the flag, and I make a really big triangle. You can barely see there, really big triangle. Now I'm going to make sure I have my scissors available. I am going to cut this up to about the size that I want the front of my triangle to be. Actually, even more. Let's go ahead and just cut these two pieces off the sides here. Let's make it easier to see. And these scissors have a slight curve to them. They're not really the best for this use, but we'll clean that up later. So, and all that out of there. Now, I want my flag to be about this big. These are pretty small. They're about 1 inch long. So using my embossing tool again, I'm going to make a straight edge right across where I want the side of my flag to be. And then when I fold that over, I can run my tool around the sides of those. And once I cut that out, they're both exactly the same shape with a fold in the middle. So, okay. A couple of snips here. And this way I'm not trying to measure and like make sure that the two sides are exactly the same. I just found this faster. This is the way my brain was working. Your brain works making it freehand or measuring it, by all means. The whole point is that it is this shape here, a long triangle, or long diamond, I guess I should say, folded in the middle. All right, we're going to put that aside. Now we're going to make one of the pieces with the quilling paper. I have 2 strips of 4 inches. And this is back to the thin paper. This is the 1/8 inch quilling paper. I'm rolling that all the way from end to end on my tool. Take it off, let it open up, and give it a good pinch. We are making teardrops here. I'm going to turn these 2 teardrops into a heart. And I have a gabillion different Valentine's Day projects on my channel here. So you may have seen this heart done a million times. Hearts are very traditional in quilling paper because they're so easy to do. So here is the other half, and they're going to be about the same size because I have the same size paper strip and I've let them open up about the same size. Get that part glued down. A little bit of an extra bit there on that one too. Pinch that to seal and then just snip off a little bit. There you go. Get all that out of there. And now we're just going to put some glue on one side and press those 2 pieces together to make a super fast heart that's going to go on our flag. There you go. At this point, if you want to start using tacky glue to get things to stick a little bit faster, that is definitely going to speed it up a little bit. And get that to dry for a second, and then we're actually just going to do an outline on this one. This is completely optional, but just to get this to look a little bit more finished and to stand out a little bit on our flag, we are going to use a piece of white quilling paper and just wrap it around my heart a couple of times. So I'm starting in the center. If you watch my video, my last video, we were making hearts as well, and we did a similar process. They were just bigger. So I start in the middle of the heart because it sort of hides the edge of the paper. Glue that down real good. You notice I rubbed it with my needle tool a little bit just to make sure that it was nice and secure. And then I wrap it around my heart, adding a little bit of glue as I go. Get to the peak, pinch that, add a little bit more glue. Now we're getting up to the top again. This is so small, it goes really fast. A little bit of glue right in the center there again, and using my tool, just push it in there a little bit. We're going to do it twice. So same thing, a little bit of glue, and wrap that around, holding it steady with one hand and making sure that this white strip doesn't start going crooked, so everything's on the same level. And a little bit more glue all the way around. back to the top, and this is kind of the same thing I showed last week. Push it into the top of the heart there. I like to push it down with my fingernail to make a little crease, and that gives me a line where I know I can snip it right off and it will fit in there perfectly. And there we go. There's our little tiny heart that is wrapped in some white. I'm going to move on to another part of our accent. This is that double thick gray strip that I made in the beginning and now I've set aside to dry. And we're going to run it through one of the medium teeth here on our crimper. And because we made a double thick strip, it's nice and sturdy. I can kind of hold it here and I'm not going to be worried too much about losing that texture. Okay, put that aside and we will move on to the final piece of the puzzle here. We're going to be making some fringe pieces of those wider quilling paper strips at 3/8 inch. And I like to use my small scissors to fringe. I have many videos on different fringe projects and why I like to use my scissors. But long story short, it just gives me more control and it lets me get it really, really fine. So the trick is just to do tiny little snips, but make sure you don't go all the way through the paper. And for this, we only need about 1.5 inches. I'm just having a bit of a longer piece here so it's easier to hold. So once I get that 1.5 inches of that white, I'm going to tear that off and set that aside. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the pink and then the same thing to the red. And as always, I will have links to all of these paper and other tools and supplies that I use. And I'll also leave a link to one of the videos I made about why I do paper fringe with scissors as compared to other tools. I have kind of a compare contrast video. I'll leave that in the description box as well for this video in case you're wondering if it's just easier to use a different technique for this. If that's what you like, by all means, this is just my experience. So I'm going to get to the red part and do my 1.5 inches of fringe for that. And then get that torn off and set aside. And I know it seems like it would take a really long time to do the fringe by hand. It really doesn't. Because one, you don't have to be kind of precious about it. We're just snipping like crazy. And really to do these couple of inches, you can see this is in real time. It doesn't take very long at all. There's a tiny bit more here. And that is about that. So we'll get that torn off. And we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're going to kind of layer these and roll them up all at one time. So I want them sort of shingled a little bit. I'm going to do lightest to darkest. So I'm going to put a little bit of my white glue all along the solid edge that we did not glue, but I'm not going all the way to the right side. I'm kind of starting a tiny bit in, right about where my thumb is there. And then I'm going to line my light pink up where that glue starts. You can see it's not completely even. And that's going to make the pink hang over a little bit, which is what we want. And I'm going to do the same thing here, starting a little bit in, and then glue all the way to the end, and then put the red on. So this is what it should look like about now. Let that dry for a minute or two. And then we're just going to roll it up. And I want the white to be on the outside. So I'm doing it this direction. That's your choice. You can make it however you want. And this glue hasn't totally dried yet, so that is going to make this rolling just a little bit wonky for a second, but that's okay. I'm not going to let it open up at all here, and I'm going to glue down the end, holding it carefully. Whoa. Holding it carefully so I don't tear any of the fringe. I'll just very gently roll that over. This is what I'm looking at here. Doesn't look like much, but then when you kind of pull the fringe out, you sort of have those layers of the different colors. And there we go. So you just fluff that up any way you like. So now we have our little pom-pom, we have our flag, we have our heart, we have our crimped bits. Oops, we don't need any of that. And then we have our little stick here. Now it is a matter of just putting it all together. We're going to grab a cork board for this. You don't need to. We're not going to be pinning anything. This is just so I don't get glue on my workplace here. And the last thing I want to do is I'm actually going to snip this brown in half lengthwise. You don't have to do that. You can use the entire thing. I just wanted it a little bit skinnier here. Sorry, I'm running off the camera here. Don't stay there. There we go. Get rid of one of those. And here is, doesn't need to be perfect. Most of it's going to be covered up by the flag. So to start putting this together, I am going to be gluing my flagpole inside my little flag here. And just in case anybody isn't sure where we're going with this, what direction we're headed in, and you missed the thumbnail in the beginning of the video, these are going to be sort of like a pennant type flag. These were inspired by some videos I saw on TikTok where creators were making these out of felt, and it could easily be translated into quilling paper. So that's why I'm kind of making one here as well. And unfortunately, I didn't save the video of the felt flags to share here, and I wish I did. I went back to look for them and I couldn't find them. But if you're on TikTok or you're on other things, this may look a little bit familiar here. So I really just ran some glue. This is going to be using tacky glue along one side of my flag, and then tucked my flagpole in, folded it back over, and that's going to keep the flag together, and then also keep my flagpole in. Then I put a little bit of tacky glue on my cork board here because I'm going to start dipping the rest of the elements in and get those on my flag. I'm going to start with my heart and just do a bit of glue and then tap, 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 and then put that right in the center here. And this could be your stopping point here. This is totally adorable, and that could be where you stop, but we're going to put the rest of our pieces in as well. So I have my little fringed pom-pom here, and I'm going to put that in the corner. And notice that is a little bit taller because it's that wider paper. So just be aware that's going to stand up a little bit more off of our flag. Let that dry for a little bit. And now I'm going to come in with my crimped piece. And this is going to sort of look like, if you can picture kind of the old time flags, they have sort of like a rickrack design on them around the edges sometimes. So that's kind of what we're doing with this crimped paper. So I'm going to run it along the three sides here, just in a little bit. And that's going to kind of tuck under the pom-pom and then meet at the point when we get all the pieces on here. So here's the top piece. That nice and straight. And I'm going to be doing it in 3 pieces here instead of trying to get it folded around the flag. It's just would be a little bit more difficult, and I definitely might lose some of my crimping if I did that. So I got the bottom part kind of eyeballed here, cut that off where I think it's going to fit. If you're not sure, always do a little bit extra, and then you can trim it down if you need to, but that looks pretty good. And dip, dip, dip. And you can see here why making this a double thick strip is coming in a little bit handy, because all this measuring and dipping and going back and forth, we would have definitely lost some of our texture here if this wasn't really nice and sturdy. And there you go, that fits right in that section there. And dippy dippy dip. And go ahead and tuck that under. And that's about that. Let that dry. Wish my heart was a little bit more centered there, but that's okay. I have some fully dried flags here I'm going to show in a second. Here's one. Pretty similar. That one doesn't have the heart that's wrapped. This one does. And I made different color pom-poms, but pretty much the same. Oops. So just a little something different, because sometimes, you know, you run out of things to do with your quilling paper and you sort of want to branch out a little bit, go beyond the traditional. Here is another version. Instead of doing the flagpole, I made the cardstock flags in the same way and then folded them over some twine, tied that in some bows, and glued that to the sides of the card just to make sort of this like a banner. And then just did the little rickrack crimped paper at the top. So similar technique, just probably a little bit better for maybe a card. You can glue the flags down on the card. I wanted to be able to show them and how they moved. So there you go, just something a little different for Valentine's Day, inspired by the flags made of felt that I was seeing online. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comment section. I'll get back to them as soon as I can. All the links to tools, supplies, and that fringe video will be in the description box, along with the link to this Buy Me a Coffee page that I made, where you can find some quilling extras and other ways to support the channel, which is always super duper helpful because it helps me be able to make these videos week after week. It's always greatly appreciated for any traffic I see over there. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe so you could be around for the next video. And I will see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.